For my final brand history project, I've chosen Gillette. For a brief brand history of Gillette, the company was founded by King Camp Gillette in 1901. The original name of the company was the American Safety Razor Company. The original slogan was "For the Civilized Man," which was an early jab at masculinity. Maxon and BBDO were just a few of the many advertising agencies that worked on Gillette. During the time of 1910 to 1920, World War I was going on. The European Gillette sales office was gone. However, there was a new opportunity to market to men in the military and tie how great the close shave kept up with military standards. One advertisement read, "God send to the American sailor," implying a sense of rigidness of being in the military. They saw the war effort as a marketing opportunity. It issued a Gillette shaving kit to every soldier. Gillette was first introduced, their advertising tried to curtail barbers, saying that no one needed the high-end shave. But then they changed course. They began encouraging barbers to sell the razors out of their shops, giving them a percentage of the sales for every Gillette razor they sold. Once the First World War came to a close, thousands of men went back home. Now Gillette needed to change their focus and turn to a new marketing tactic: masculinity. This was a very early sign of how the rest of their advertisements would go in terms of the marketing towards the manly man. Here the advertisement on the right showed how men in banking, a rather masculine jobs place, claim that Gillette is the preference when it comes to a good clean shave. Katz Patterson Co. was Gillette's advertising agency during this era. However, also during this time, there were marketers in the room that realized that there was an untapped space for the women's market. As we all are aware, the women's hygiene revolution was sparked by soap and razor companies. They thought they could tap into how women should shave their armpits, or they may not be found attractive by males. This ended up not being the time to go into this space. Sales did not go extremely high, tapping into the women's market. Also during this decade, Gillette became an early adopter of radio advertisements. They had the Gillette Blades Orchestra, which was early product placement, and they had singers and pianists and some sports summary. This continued to enforce a masculine view of things. The 1930s signaled the beginning of a new chapter for Gillette as the Great Depression hit. At the beginning of the 1930s, Gillette merged with Otto Strop Razor Company. At the same time, the Great Depression was taking a hold on the U.S. The advertising budget went way down. The market for razors was becoming more saturated with other shaves such as Schnick. They were overall better razors, causing Gillette to rethink its marketing and possibly roll out a new product. Consumers were becoming more and more frustrated with the quality of Gillette razors and started talking to the company about it. Gillette started owning up to their mistakes and created an entire ad series discussing the flaws of their razor, putting in real work and using transparency to try to win back consumers. During this time, they also used scare tactics during the Great Depression. They regularly had ads that would juxtapose how Gillette close shave was the difference between poverty and prosperity. After the turmoil of the 30s, Gillette made a move to change the dynamic of the company and to change morale. There was a new president of Gillette, and he was so successful that he was able to increase the ad budget by 50% going into the 40s. The 40s were also an era that Gillette became increasingly present in the sports world, and that was specific in the Baseball World Series. They were the exclusive broadcast sponsor of the series, making it so people were nearly forced to be soaking up their advertisements. Eventually, they devoted 20% of their advertising budget to the sporting event. And they sold promotional radio slots. They wanted to move into other sports. They moved into other sports during this time, such as the Kentucky Derby, the college football bowl games, and other professional sporting events. They also had the radio show, the Gillette Cavalcade of Sports, done by NBC, that started in 1942. It broadcasted all of these sports, so they were beginning to move into that space as well. At the end of the 1940s, Gillette again tried its hand at women's hygiene by purchasing Tony Co., a home permanent marketer. They also started placing themselves in TV shows, such as Arthur Godfrey and Friends. Baseball was the biggest revenue of advertising for their sports broadcast throughout the 50s, but boxing came into the space for Gillette and was the perfect opportunity because it was a primarily male-watched market. The biggest breakthrough for the company so far in the history came in 1959 in the World Series. They debuted the new Blue Blades, which had the sharpest edges ever. They also were pushing racial barriers by using Willie Mays as the primary celebrity endorsement for the advertising. It proved to be extremely lucrative. Gillette needed to do this because Schnick was coming out with the new electric razors. This also began to move away from hyper-masculine tone, which lasted for about 30 years. In 1962, Gillette moved away from the Super Blue blade and moved towards implementing a completely stainless steel blade. They were far behind in doing this, though, for the times. The Maxon Advertising Agency was still represented the company during this time in doing their ads, but it became clear that the advertisements were increasingly not progressing and becoming any better. Overall, in the 60s, it was not a very notable time for Gillette. They were not moving in an innovative direction, and they tried to appeal to both men and women, but looking at sales numbers, nothing was really working. During the 70s, Gillette advertising teams that worked on different advertisements at the time knew that they needed to make a difference because they were falling behind in the marketplace for blades. They debuted the new detachable blades of the 70s and wanted to strike a convenience undertone. They used the 1971 World Series, an old reliable marketing spot, to show the convenience of the new blades and their simplicity. Also during the 70s, Gillette moved outside of U.S. lines to reach a wider international audience. They focused on European sporting events such as Formula One, FIFA, the FIFA World Cup, and even began the Gillette Cup in cricket themselves. With this came the need to be able to reach international crowds effectively. The advertisement here is from a UK advert showing the Techmatic razor, which was a hit during this time because of its adjustableness. It was showing all the special features of the razor. Notable in the 1980s, Gillette changed its marketing strategy from emphasizing quality to stressing convenience. However, this affected profits, and they began to wane in the 80s. The biggest campaign at the time was employing the use of the ad campaign, Gillette, the best a man can get. The entire idea behind the campaign was pushing for men to be the best they can be through life actions such as being athletes, getting married, having kids, and more. The campaign was led by BBDO Worldwide in Boston. The entire point of the series of ads was to get back to the grassroots traditional image of Gillette, which was putting together masculinity with high-quality product. The campaign was launched during the Super Bowl game, which is one of the most expensive yet best placed to display creative campaigns. The campaign was launched internationally at a hefty price tag of $80 million. The campaign used many forms of imagery such as broadcast media, music, and print. They translated the campaign into 14 languages and was in use for the entire decade. Gillette brought back the slogan, "The best a man can get," in 1990 to launch off their next campaign for a sensor razor. The sensor was one of the biggest launches the brand had done in the sense of technology and ease of use. Gillette used all of its advertising budget, which was $175 million, on just this campaign. The sensor shaver was a huge success in the male marketplace. By the end of 1990, demand was outpacing supply. Because of this, the campaign, which was led by BBDO, had to pull some advertisements because of the mass amount of success. During this time, it seemed like a good move to tap back into the women's marketplace, which before had not been very successful. They created the sensor razor for women and used a $14 million advertisement for the product, and it was a huge success. Towards the end of the 90s, Gillette launched its $40 million campaign, Are You Ready? It started positioning itself as part of the women's physical and psychological beauty regimen. The final launch of the 90s was for the Match 3 razor. This was an aerodynamic, easy-to-use product. The advertisement for it used jet planes and launching pads as imagery to show how smooth it was for use. The promotional campaign had a budget of $300 million. It again used the best a man can get slogan. In 2001, Gillette launched the Women's Venus Razor. The razor was built off the Match 3 razor. The tagline for the Venus Razor was, "Reveal the Goddess Within." This proved to be very lucrative in terms of catapulting this women's razor to the top of its category. In 2003, there was pressure from Schnick, which was quickly churning out new razors that were competing in terms of quality with Gillette. Gillette came out with the vibrating Power Match 3 M3 power system to rival the Quattro braid from Schnick. In 2002, Gillette ranked number 66 in Advertising Age's list of leading national advertiser. It had a total ad spending of $495 million, growing 7% that year. Sales were nearly $4 billion in 2002. In January of 2005, P&G acquired Gillette for $57 billion in stock. This allowed them to surpass Unilever as the world's largest consumer products company and also put them ahead of GM as the top U.S. advertising spender.